Hello and welcome to our series about what is Scrum. My name is Boris Gloger. Today I want to talk about the product owner. In one of my last videos I talked about the roles in Scrum, that we have the product owner, the Scrum Master, development team, that they consist and create the Scrum team, that the Scrum team delivers to the end user, that the customer orders the product functionality from, most of the time, the product owner, and that the manager is the one who sets up Scrum teams within his organizations that are able to deliver our products. And we had already a specific video about the Scrum Master, and today I want to talk about the product owner and his specific roles. It's a quite complicated role, by the way. The most important aspect to understand about the product owner is he's in charge of making money. In the former time, we talked about the product owner as he's responsible for the return on investment. And he has to prioritize the product backlog in a way. And the product backlog is the list of functionality that we have, or that the development team wants to deliver. And he is in charge of prioritizing this product backlog. That was the very first, very simple idea about what the product owner will do and is in charge of. But this reduced understanding, or simplistic form, not reduced, the simplistic way of understanding the role of the product owner doesn't explain what he really does. A product owner is driving the product by having a vision about what he really wants to achieve. So it's not that he's only in charge of building with his development team features that a customer or the business department wants to have. He always has a vision about what he would like to achieve with the specific product. So he answers the question why we need that specific product. And especially if you have an innovative product, you need to come up with a guy who wants to change something, who wants to change an industry, or he wants to create an impact. We know one very important representative of this kind of product owner, and that was Steve Jobs, or at the moment you could say Elon Musk with Tesla and SpaceX is exactly that kind of person who says, I want to have a specific product because I want to follow a vision. The product owner also needs to understand the context in which his product is situated in. So it's not only that I know I want to go to the Mars, Elon Musk, SpaceX, it's also to understand I have specific constraints. Going to the Mars means I really understand what it needs to be able to go to Mars. Building a car needs a clear understanding about physics and engineering. Creating something like the first Mac or an iPhone needs to have an understanding what are the specific constraints in my market. And sometimes it's technology, sometimes it's infrastructure, sometimes it's legacy, sometimes we have legal requirements from governments, for instance, and so on. So the product owner is in charge of creating that why, coming up with the vision, and knowing exactly what kind of constraints are imposed in my specific marketplace, because the design of our product will have dependency based on the constraints that we have. The funny aspect is that most companies don't create a clear understanding about the constraints. So therefore, the product owner's first job, beside creating the vision and beside collecting features maybe from his customers, is to come up with the list of the constraints by talking to stakeholders. And with stakeholders, I don't mean people that we mean typically in projects that are involved in some way. Stakeholders are the ones who have needs on that product. Have in some way they will be influenced by the product themselves or by developing the product, by the process. So these stakeholders have needs, and these needs are expressed by creating constraints. So the need of the legal department might be to be comply to the to regulatories. For instance, in the medtech industries might be the FDA. So this is the need. I need to comply to the FDA. So basically that means the product owner will come up with specific constraints for these needs of these stakeholders. So one big aspect of the product owner is to come up with how do we make money? How do we create, based on our vision and the business model of our company, building that product money? So that's the whole return on investment idea. So he is an entrepreneur, or in other terms, intrapreneur within his organization. He needs to come up with the vision for the product. And the vision is not just a combined bundle of all the feature sets. It's about why does the market really needs to have this specific product. And he needs to come up with a list of constraints by talking to the stakeholders and transferring the needs into this list of constraints. So one recommendation, and I think that is really important, it's not enough just to talk once to the stakeholders and create a list of constraints. It is much more important to frequently update the list of constraints by talking again and again to the stakeholder. My recommendation is to do it once a month, to have monthly reviews with your stakeholders about the constraints, and maybe nothing changes, so all constraints and all needs stays the same. Then it's a 5-minute job to do, and sometimes you really need to have long discussions with your stakeholders because they certainly would like to change something on the prerequisites of your projects, and these are the constraints, and that might be then that you have to have a huge impact, or you will have a huge amount of work because of the new requirements of your stakeholders. So sometimes it's much better to discuss these business constraints in some way and say, okay, that's a new project, then include it into the project, especially if it's later in the project. Okay, so that was maybe quite a different view on the role of the product owner. I hope it was beneficial for you. And if you have any questions, drop me an email. Have fun using Scrum. See you.